Hello everyone, Maurice here, and today I'm bringing you the Axie Infinity Origins Meta Report Season 6, the late final era. So this will be the final report for this season, and yeah, let's just jump right into the report. So here's really the gist of it. Feather is still dominating, and the surprising thing, well, actually probably not that surprising, is that we see Sustain is coming back, and yeah, as for every season, Sustain will find a way. And the other thing might be that Anomaly might still be going up. So yeah, there might be some challenges to the feather domination. And we'll see. Okay, so first let's just get into the really the player base statistics. And of course, if you want more information and more about my take on different things, do check out the blog post. But yeah, so let's just go through the statistics. And basically now we have over 6,000 players at Challenger. Um, and yeah, here as you can see, a very similar curve. But one thing that I do want to note is kind of this part where you can see over 70,000 players have played in season 6, and to be honest, about half of them are below 500 victory stars. So that just means that probably half of the players just played the game and left, tried it out, and didn't really make it very far. Or that, of course, there could be bots that maybe just couldn't really get above a certain point just because maybe the power level is too low or whatever it is. So the actual real players are really maybe the top 30,000, and even then if you really want to look at the players who are really just like chasing the meta, it's definitely just the top thousands. Yeah, so people at Challenger basically. Okay, so yeah, here is basically Challenger. The curve is very similar as before. Yeah, it's always this kind of shape, very nice shape. And of course, now we get to 2,500 victory stars for the top players. And yeah, this is similar. Well, something that I want to highlight is really this particular peak here at right below 500 victory star, where this is where the flat line was in the previous graph. And yeah, you can see basically over 30K, 30,000 players are below 500 victory stars. So I must say, I wouldn't call those active players. They are probably just players that either bots or they come and go. Yeah, so yeah, so you can see here, right, the top, maybe close to 10,000 players, but maybe a bit less. A few thousand players are really the core community. I would say that really constantly play the game, or at least play enough to get to Challenger. Of course, even in Challenger, as you'll see later, there are players who so-called don't really chase the meta and really just play whatever teams that they have. Yeah, so let's just get into that part. So here is really the statistics of the archetypes being played at different victory stars. Of course, to start from the top, and you see that Feather is pretty much dominant there. But I should note that there are only really a handful, and if I just scroll back up here, and you can see only 6 players at the time of writing that yeah has over 2,500 victory star points. So there are really not many players out there. Of course, the players up there also changes whatever team they play as well, depending on how they feel, or just maybe want to snipe whatever matchups. So even though there are 6 players only, of course people or players can go up and drop down as well. But yeah, so do note that the very top, only 6 players at the very top, and then another 43, so about top 50 will be at the 2,400 or above. So that's something to note. And then I would say about top 200 will be above 2,300. So that's the benchmark there. So you can see Feather, a lot of people still playing at all levels, pretty much. And the well, so-called surprising thing is that Sustain is back. And it is actually mostly taking advantage of the Sandal, because Sandal really relies a lot on the debuffs, and Sustain, of course, now the so-called modern day Sustain, well, rather Season 6 Sustain is all about Cleanser, really. So that's why Sandal has a very tough time. At the very top, I think for Sustain is actually having a relatively even matchup with Feather, so it's actually doable for Sustain against Feather. And then the rest, we also see Anomaly also plays a part here at the very top, and Confuse as well. So actually Confuse is something to look out for, as well as Anomaly. Okay, then if you go down a bit, then we start to see things like Sando is still pretty strong, Brutal Claw is still pretty strong, Momo as well. Actually, we see two Momo teams, I think, at the top 20 or something. So yeah, Momo is definitely still viable despite the nerfs. And then we start to see, if you go down a bit, then yeah, we start to see the triple R, the Fury aggro, that kind of thing. Yeah, so uh, yeah, and then of course once you go down further, then this is where you start to see other things like Purge. But do note that you really have to go pretty far down, right? Really at like 21, or rather below 22,000, in order to really see Poison. So Poison is the light orange here. And I guess the sad thing is that you really have to go even further to actually find the purple ones, which are the leafy and the topaz. Right, so below 2100 victory stars, that's when you actually see significant, I must say, significant proportion of players playing topaz and leafy, and of course poison as well. So this is the kind of point that I want to make, is that there are definitely people, if you, well, I don't have the data for even lower, but I would assume there'll be even higher proportion of people playing Topaz and Leafy, and that's just because, yeah, mainly they just want to play with their own team that they had from previous seasons. Of course, well, one reason is XP grinding, right? Maybe preparing for parts upgrade, but also one of the main reasons is probably because they don't want to chase the meta and they just want to play with whatever existing Axies that they have from previous seasons. Yeah, and I do feel like that is actually probably the majority of the player. If you just scroll up, yeah, go scroll up at the end here, and you can see that we are only looking at the very, very small proportion here, right? Right, and this chart is literally just at the top, what, 3,000, less than 3,000, right? And the majority of the players are actually down here, and those players are the ones that are mostly actually playing, I would assume, Topaz, Leafy, Poison, and that kind of thing. But unfortunately for those players, which are the majority of the casual players, there's really not much in terms of changes between the seasons. It's because they're playing the same archetypes and seeing similar matchups. So this is where I hope that Origins can improve on, in terms of not just looking at, of course, there'll always be a meta to chase, and for the top 1,000, 2,000 players, they are chasing the top. But even if you look at from 1,900 to 2,000 victory stars, there are a significant proportion of players playing just the old stuff at Topaz and Leafy, and there'll be more further down as well. So yeah, hopefully, yeah, we'll see more new changes. Part upgrade hopefully will come soon. Okay, so now let's just look at the win rate and the matchup. So this is the overall win rate. This is where probably better to make it a bit smaller, so that everything fits. Do note that this is for days 12, sorry, days 10 to 12, so the past 3 days. And you can see Feather is really the main one, of course, and Sustain is actually doing okay. And the other thing I want to mention is actually Anomaly, which has 80% win rate at, well, 2,400 to 2,500, which is really very high win rate. And this is why I think that Anomaly has a chance to continue going forward and even challenge Feather for the top spot. So yeah, the other point I do want to make is you can look at the win rate of Topaz and Leafy, or even to some extent like Poison as well. So they are really not doing very well, but there are still players playing that and trying to make it work. And I do feel like that's mostly because people are just sticking with the existing team that they have from previous seasons, and just trying the best to do what they have, well, to do what they can based on what they have, as opposed to buying new Axies, chasing the meta every season. Okay, so the other thing that I should say is that Sando, Brutal Claw, Momo, yeah, and Confused as well. Those are doing pretty well. Sponge is kind of clinging on and hanging on there, but might not be able to make much progress. So overall, I do feel like the win rate matches pretty well with the usage in general. Okay, then let's just look at the overall matchup. Here, I'm just going to show you the overall matchup for the players above 1900s. So this is really includes mostly, I must say, mostly non-optimal team, just because a lot of players, especially at the lower end of challengers, are playing whatever team they have. Obviously, not the optimal team. Otherwise, they'll probably be a lot higher. So here you can see that now the main thing I do want to point out is Sustain still has the so-called most polarizing matchups. Yeah, it really suffers against Fury Aggro, but does pretty well right against Sandos and Cuckoo Bobo and so on. So yeah, Sustain still around. And of course, obviously, you can see that the win rate against Feather is not great, and of course that includes a lot of non-optimal team. If I just want to quickly scroll down to the very bottom, do check out the blog post for more information. Right, and here is the matchup for 24,025, right, which is really the top 50, and you can see it is quite different in terms of the picture. So Sustain is pretty even, like about 50% against the Feather. Okay, so the key one, of course, as I mentioned, right, Sustain is really doing very well against Sandal because of the cleanser, stopping any debuff from putting onto the Sustain axes. And you can see that Momo is also actually doing okay and so on. So yeah, definitely check out the blog post for more information for different brackets that you might be in. And also there are information on the basically playtime. So what kind of players might be playing in terms of archetype over the 24-hour period. So maybe you might want to avoid certain matchup. Let's say if you want to avoid Feather at a certain level, you might want to play at a certain time. So of course, it only works for certain, well, at the very top, because once you get down here, then even below 23,000, there are enough players that the doesn't really make too much of a difference in terms of when or what time you queue. Okay, so yep, so I think that is pretty much what I want to say in terms of the data and everything. But well, in conclusion, really, I do want to point out that yeah, we are at it again in terms of completing another cycle of chasing the meta. In the sense of, in this case, season 6, the newly buffed stuff like Feather, Anomaly, Bleed gets to the top. I guess there are also things like Sandals and Confuses because of the energy burst change. So basically, the newly changed stuff ultimately get to the top, whereas the old stuff that get nerfed, basically Topaz, Leafy, and so on, goes down. So let's hope that for season 7 we'll see something different than just another cycle of buffing certain underused archetypes and then leaving the existing archetypes, just like nerfing them. And yeah, so the reason is because, of course, from the Skybeamers perspective, there's a lot of incentive to continue another cycle so that people will start continue to breed more Axies, continue to buy more Axies to chase the meta. But at some point, it is getting repetitive, especially for players who at some point may not be willing to continue to chase the meta and just want to play with the existing Axies. And so I do feel like it's a shame that a lot of the Axies from previous seasons really just sit in our inventory and really do nothing just because nobody wants to buy them anymore because they're not in the meta. And so that's why I hope that for season 6, for season 7, hopefully it will be more of a season of spicing up existing archetypes. Like it's just the Leafy, the Topaz, or whatever other archetypes now, maybe triple R, or even like triple like Nuts, or even like Glorious Main, that kind of thing that has kind of been forgotten. And hopefully we see those things come up more, and actually more about. Hopefully it'll be more about the Axies themselves as opposed to runes and charms. And of course, parts upgrades hopefully will come soon, and that could be hopefully part of the solution of spicing up existing archetypes so that we can reuse the axes that have been sitting in our inventory uselessly for the past don't know how many seasons. Okay, so that is pretty much it for this meta report. So thank you for following me with well, all the way for the whole season, and hopefully the next video will be about new changes, and hopefully we don't have that long to wait, but who knows how long the off season will be. Let's hope it won't be too long. And okay, that's it for today, and see you in the next video.